For most of my life, I've been haunted by a dream. It's a dream about going back to Bermuda, where I was a kid, back to the beach where I used to swim. I left Bermuda when I was about 9. My mother had contracted leukemia and we needed to come to England to get her treatment. This recurring dream was always the same. I was approaching the beach, trying to get to the beach, and the closer I got, the more often I got diverted and ended up somewhere where I didn't want to be, which was nothing to do with the beach. I left Bermuda with a handful of faded photographs which were pretty unintelligible, and some brilliant memories, and an earworm in the form of a song that was played to me when I was in my crib.
Mother, 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 oh, I'm going to a party. Mother, 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 oh, I hardly can wait.
Hurry, 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 dear, go dress yourself, darling. Hurry, 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 dear, or you will be late.
I'm dressing myself. What have I here?
That is your undershirt, shirt, my darling dear.
Undershirt, shirt. Peek-a, peek-a, peek-a-boo.
That's no way to go to a party.
When I was 60, I decided what I was going to do is take my wife to Bermuda and go to the beach, go to this beach I've been spending my whole dream life trying to get to, and to show it to her. And what was foremost in my mind was to make an artwork of that experience, not of my childhood, but the experience of returning, and returning with someone else, someone who wasn't familiar with it. So the artwork was really about that. It was a new artwork, not a nostalgic thing at all. I've often said that making a work of art is a bit like swimming. You have to jump into the water, assess the conditions, and see what stroke you're going to use to get out of it. When I got back to England, I decided I was going to make a print because I like printmaking. It comes from my days at Great Yarmouth Art College when I was on foundation. I had the luck of being taught by Barry Drake, who was an inspiration. So here I am, I'm at the beach, I'm swimming, and I'm not really sure where I'm going forward. I decided what I would do is make a series of large paintings, double A1 or AO, in acrylic and charcoal, and work out my ideas on a very large scale. Unlike most artists, I start with an idea in my head and I do my sketches, and then my sketches lead somewhere. This time I was doing it differently by working big to start with and then working small. So I sort of used the information on the large scale into my small scale, and when you work small scale you're a little bit more ruthless. And then I was going to use this to influence my print, or how I cut my print blocks. I actually preferred the smaller paintings to the larger paintings, which is always a dilemma. It's always when you're doing something quickly and throwaway that you end up with something fantastic. And whenever you try and do something deliberate, you end up in an Achilles Bay situation where you never seem to get to the beach. And that was very true of this project. So the further I went down the road, the further away I was. I always work in a state of chaos, and my studio is a state of chaos, and with this project I sort of harnessed it, and I decided what I was going to do is going to make a limited edition of oil paintings, all on the same thing, using stencils to try and make them equivalent, and do 9 of them, see where it led me. In the meantime, I was using bits of wood that I found on the beach as my palettes, and I was going to make a different work of art with the bits of wood. I mean, if I nail them together, I call them fences, and if I just stick them in piles of painted wood, I call them splinter groups. And I wasn't sure what was going to happen here, whether these were going to be a splinter group or it's going to be fences, but I knew that I was going to have 9 oil paintings, and then I was going to tackle the print, making the blocks, and hopefully all of this artistic activity was going to inform me and tell me what I was doing, because it has to be said, I was pretty blind and didn't really know what I was doing, which is my preferred way of making art anyway. The paintings would develop in their own way, go their own way. The pieces of wood would develop in their own way and end up something completely different, and I had no doubt that the print would determine how it was going to look, and it was going to go its own way. It's always a struggle with painting. You want some of it to be fresh and some of it to be detailed, and you know, this was no different when you're doing 9 or whether you're doing 1. You're trying to get each one to be a fresh, new thing, even though they were copies of each other. You wanted each to stand out by itself, and you wanted the wood, or I wanted the wood, to go its own way and be fresh. And I didn't want this to be a closed operation. I wanted it to be a very open operation where I had no idea what I was going to end up with in the end. I've often been asked what these grids are. I put these grids onto a picture because it sort of enhances the surface and it pulls the colour out. I tend to use the colours in the grids that I use in the painting themselves, so there's this play between the surface and the picture. It's sort of like a quantized painting, you know, it's to do with probability, it's quantum mechanics. What is the probability that that colour there is going to be blue? I've always been a big fan of the lottery, even though the lottery's not really been much of a fan of mine. I decided what I was going to do is use all my used lottery tickets in this work of art by making paper out of these pieces of paper. If you wanted to go and live in Bermuda, you'd need to win the lottery, and I'm sure that if I did win the lottery, I would do everything I could to move back there, although whether I could get my wife to come back with her dogs would be another issue altogether. And I presume that I probably would still be just visiting Bermuda, still living in Eastbourne. My work's made by chance, and the fact that the lottery is chance is sort of was quite poetic to be having like a cross correlation of these two ideas of chance and creativity at the same time. So I decided what I was going to do is I was going to use Shinkale in the print, and the Shinkale was going to be made of handmade paper, which I made using paper pulp and lottery tickets. You never know what's going to happen when you pull that frame out of the pulp bath and what you're going to end up with. So that was another chance which I really enjoyed in the process. there could be some sort of deliberation with the rearrangement of torn up lottery tickets, but generally it's not an homogenized product. I'm trying to, again, using the chance element, make blocks, 2 wood blocks and 2 mount board blocks or collagraphs to create a print. Not knowing, what's going to come out at the end. It's just a matter of jump in and see what the water's like. Just that simple, really, and act accordingly and let the print make itself. I love using stencils, and what I like about the printmaking process is there's so many different ways of making things match up. Stencils or masks, and a lot of paperwork, cutting of paper and fitting of bits of paper together to make things marry up in the final print. But I didn't want it to be too prescriptive, but I wanted to have some kind of correlation when I did it. Charcoal's quite good, particularly in printmaking, because it just reduces things to black and white. And although I wasn't having a black block with this blue or white or red or white or pink or white or green or white, it gives you this on-off binary system without being too fussy. And that's what I like about it. It's the roughness, it's the way things don't fit, the way things go wrong that are the best bits for me when I look at a print. I like printing off plywood because it's very easy to cut, very easy to peel, and it sort of has a splintery effect. So you have this sort of loss of control where things are moving. There's a blur, sort of like a moving photograph. I like chipping away at a wood block. It's like cutting into chocolate if you get the right kind of wood. I try and not make it my wood blocks too fussy. If I start to not enjoy the process of cutting them, then the work doesn't really, well, it doesn't interest me. It doesn't have that same attraction to print it if it's just been a headache to cut it. So I try and make it quite quick, quite simple, and enjoy the actual cutting process. And once I start getting a bit bored of the process, then I just stop and work another way around the problem if it's an issue. You can use the same process as the woodblock on your collagraphs. You know, you cut through the paper, which cuts through the surface of the mount board, and then enables you to peel the mount board away, giving you two different kinds of surfaces. So just with the use of a Stanley knife, you can transfer the drawing really simply. The other thing with mount boards is you can actually collage onto them as well, which is quite good fun. So, you know, if you over peeled it, which I think I probably did with this block, you can stick other things on and bring it back again. So, you know, it's quite a nice process from that point of view. So there we have it. 2 wood blocks, 2 collagraphs, and a load of handmade paper for making Shinkalei. What could possibly go wrong at this point? Well, first I need to stick the Shinkalei onto the paper, so I'm not trying to make it too accurate. Again, I want sort of a little bit of inaccuracy, a little bit of lack of control in there, so that, you know, the print might do something fortuitous, which I've got no control of, but generally still fitting within that same idea. They're all going to be of the same thing, about the same thing, even though they each might look slightly different. I'm not worried about that. I'm not interested in any professional body telling me it's a perfect edition of prints. That's not what I'm after at all. I'd like an edition of completely different prints, but all seem to be the same. One of my favourite things about printmaking is mixing ink. It's a really yummy exercise, just like with paint, and, you know, get the right colour is just perfect. It's like ice cream. I have the same feeling about paint and ink as I do ice cream, you know. Getting the right ice cream cone with the right flavours on it. That's me. That's painting. That's printing. Now, blocks are quite big, so, you know, when you're inking them up, you're going to get roller marks. So I work in a way, in this particular instance, where the roller marks are part of the print. It doesn't worry me at all, you know. Again, another anomaly. So, you know, you might find you do 20 prints and only one of them is absolutely fantastic by total accident, and that doesn't worry me at all. You can control some of the roller marks by rubbing back. That also makes the film of ink sort of mottled and less uniform, so you get different depths of colour, which, you know, again, another anomaly, another, you know, inaccuracy, which might provide something that I hadn't planned for. And in the end, I want to be as surprised as any viewer. When this print comes out, I want to say to myself, oh, it's good how that's come out. It's nothing to do with me. That's, you know, a series of accidents. I know I've got some hand in it, but it's not really about proving control for me. It's about finding something. And, you know, along with the dream, I'm finding Achilles Bay, or trying to find Achilles Bay. Very much like the dream, though, I have to say. As the process goes on, just as I think I'm getting to the beach, as the narrative of the dream continues, it ends up that at every step it's a little bit of a meander away from where I'm trying to get to, which is inevitable. I don't know what the block's going to end up looking like, so I can't be surprised when it doesn't end up looking like what I thought it might end up looking like. Printing's not like painting. You can't sort of rub out and repaint the same way. You're sort of doing a succession of layers, and you want each layer that you put on to enhance or edit the layer before it. Working in a haphazard way, which I do, you know, which is more about enjoyment than it is about control, there's no way of telling what the print's going to look like at each level, and sometimes you can do 3 or 4 layers and it looks terrible, and then suddenly you do a layer and it all comes together, and is a print that you couldn't even have dreamt that you were going to make. I always thought printing is a little bit, like a dance. You set up your dance floor, the print room, and you set up your blocks and your paper and your drying racks and your inks, and then you go through this process. It's a stepping process. It actually is. There's a way to move between the block and the press, the putting of the print onto the press, the flipping of the block. Barry Drake showed me this technique. I've always remembered it. Where you put your block down, you don't use registration blocks, you put your block in place and then you flip it very, very carefully. It might not be 100% accurate, but again, do you think that worries me after everything I've just said about making printing? It doesn't. I find it even more attractive. There might be just a little bit of a movement there. It might just print slightly different from the last one. More process. Pink. Bermuda pink. Look at the Bermuda beaches. They're so pink. Probably not that pink. That's a little closer to ice cream than beach, but it gives me the same appetite. I love the anticipation. I've got a print here, it's got a couple of colours on it, and now I'm printing the blue on it, and I have no idea what it's going to look like. I sort of know it's going to fit because of the way that I've done it, but how it's going to actually look, I don't know. And this is Achilles Bay. I'm trying to get to Achilles Bay, and in this printing process, just like the dream, I don't know if I'm going to get there or not yet. Anticipation. Well, this is how it went, but not how I wanted it to end up. So I think I've got another process to do before this print is finished, and I sort of think the flowers need to be red. There needs to be some red into this, and how I'm going to do that, I'm not sure, but I'm not at Achilles Bay yet.